Fox Sports college football analyst, USFL analyst. Hey, Joel, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Joy?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
It's nicer to come on and see you than Colin. I can tell you that.
Colin's on vacation. Colin is in the Bahamas, and I Colin's not a big hat guy. He's not a backwards hat guy, and he's not a big hat guy in general. And I told him that that sun down there in the Bahamas is not going to be kind. So you're gonna have to lean into
There's
the hat.
Nothing I want more than to see Colin Cowherd with a backwards hat on, and then we can just all never live it down.
He better not have too many margaritas and let that happen. He better not. But you've been covering the USFL all season for the inaugural season. You are calling the USFL semifinals, Philadelphia Stars and New Jersey Generals, Saturday, 3 Eastern on Fox. And the league has been great. The viewership has been great. The product's been great. It's been really fun. What are you expecting for this weekend's USFL semifinals?
Well, it's interesting. I think with any league, you're going to have teams that the cream rises to the top, and there are teams that struggled. And I found during the course of the season that when you got some of the top tier teams facing one another, the quality of football was really high. And so that's what I'm looking forward to this weekend, is because now we've got, the playoffs and these top 4 teams that have made it to this point. We're in Canton, and in particular in our matchup with New Jersey against Philadelphia, these 2 teams I thought were probably playing the best football at the end of the regular season. They actually just met each other last week, so it's the rare back-to-back matchup. Generals were able to win that one. They've won 9 in a row. But overall, Joy, it's just the quality of ball. When you get the better teams against each other, and we certainly have that with the Stars in general, the quality of quarterback play, I thought, is and will be very good with both the Generals guys, Luis Perez and DeAndre Johnson, as well as Case Cookus from Philadelphia. So, that's what I'm expecting. I think that we're going to see a great game tomorrow in this semifinal.
Yeah, Cookus is having himself quite a season. Are the New Jersey Generals the best to win it all? The best bet?
I think so. I know Birmingham was the one that started out, as kind of the undefeated team and was kind of the odds-on favorite. But when you look at New Jersey, their only loss was to Birmingham. It was in the first week of the season. They've won 9 in a row. And when you dive in and study them on tape, what you see is they're really fundamentally sound. Mike Riley, their head coach, has done an outstanding job. They've got playmakers on the outside with the league MVP, Kevontae Turpin. They've got Darius Victor. They've got Trey Williams running the ball in the backfield. They've got this 2-headed quarterback monster, each playing different roles. DeAndre Johnson, that's a runner-thrower type. Luis Perez, maybe a little bit more of a statue in the pocket type of prototypical pocket passer, but it works. And then defensively, they're very basic, but they're very tough. They are right now my favorite to win the championship because of how good that they have been, not just through the 9-week winning streak, but more in particular late in the season, the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Joel Klatt with us here on The Herd. Joy Taylor in for Colin Cowherd. He is calling the USFL semifinals. Philadelphia Stars, New Jersey Generals, Saturday at 3 Eastern on Fox. So this week we got some pretty exciting news. A guy who's been quiet about his whole commitment process. The family's been very protective of Arch Manning, rightfully so, because, your Manning is your last name. You're going to have to handle things a little differently. But he committed to Texas, and that is a big announcement for college football. What does that mean specifically for Texas football?
Well, it's fascinating because they've stacked up these high commitments, year after year after year. And I just keep thinking to myself, like, we've got a quarterback battle at Texas going into this fall between a former number 2 quarterback in this class, Hudson Card, and a number 1 overall quarterback in Quinn Ewers. Let's just say, sake of argument, Joy, that Quinn Ewers wins the job. Well, he still has 3 years to play. So then Arch Manning gets there next spring, and is he going to battle it out with Quinn Ewers? These are only both of these guys are in the rarefied air of having these perfect recruiting scores, along with a guy like Vince Young. Like, these are the only quarterbacks and they're all converging in this one place at Texas. I just find it fascinating. And to be honest with you, you start to look in the crystal ball. Joy, maybe one of these guys is going to finish his career at Texas in the new landscape of college football. And I think Steve Sarkisian understands that you can and might have to back up every single class with a great player and a great prospect. Gone are the days where you can say, listen, we're going to take a great quarterback prospect in one class, and then we're going to wait a class or 2 before we go after another one. you've got to back them up because these guys can leave right away. Now, the one thing that I also find fascinating about this is that Quinn Ewers has already taken up his transfer. So he's stuck at Texas. He's got to win the job or else he's got to have to sit out a year if he leaves. So he's a little bit behind the eight ball when you're taking a look at all these battles, all these guys that are about to be on campus in Austin and battling for that QB1 spot.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're Sark, you can't not recruit Arch Manning, right?
That's right. That's exactly. Well, you bring up a great point. And by the way, I didn't even get into that aspect. There's so many different aspects of this. Joy, how about the feather in the cap for Steve Sarkisian to get Arch Manning? I mean, this was, I can't remember. Maybe you can. Can you remember a recruit that was as highly coveted as Arch Manning? I can't.
No. Maybe for basketball, it's different, obviously. Like grassroots basketball, these kids have these massive followings on YouTube, and, you've got Sierra Canyon out here.
They make more of a difference right away in basketball, right? I mean, you can be a national title contender like that if you get the right number one recruit, if you will.
Yeah.
But this is a big deal. And it's not just because of his rating, but it's because of his name. Because Steve Sarkisian won the most coveted prize that we may have ever seen in recruiting in college football. And it's not just that guy chose Texas, it's that the Manning family chose Texas and Steve Sarkisian. I really believe that this is going to send Texas into another stratosphere as far as recruiting goes. Because every single recruit out there, in particular offensive skill position players, are going to be looking at this and saying, listen, it doesn't matter who wins this position. We're going to have a quarterback at Texas that is, outstanding and a quarterback that understands how to operate. Remember now, the last time Steve Sarkisian had weapons, he had one of the best offenses maybe in the history of college football with Mac Jones and Devontae Smith and Najee Harris, all these guys at Alabama, and you see what he was able to do. I firmly believe that Texas is heading right down that road to have an offense like that here in the next couple of years. Because if I'm a recruit and I'm looking out there and I'm like, all right, listen, the Manning family is allowing Arch to go to Texas and they trust Steve Sarkisian, that's a huge feather in the cap. And it might overtake what A&M has done in recruiting. Because remember, A&M won the year last year. So you could say like, well, Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, they're the best recruiting college program in the state of Texas. Can you say that now with Arch Manning going to the University of Texas? I'm not sure. And I think that we're probably going to see a slide towards and a movement towards Texas and Steve Sarkisian. We'll see if that pays off with wins on the field.
We're talking to Joe Klatt on the Herd USFL semifinals this weekend. You and I haven't had an opportunity to talk about NIL, although I feel like we're kind of aligned with it. Obviously, it's a very long, nuanced conversation, and I feel like you and I could talk about it for hours. It seems a little bit like it's calmed down. Maybe it's just the time of year that we're in. But really quickly, my solve for it, I think, is mostly just based on the fact that I think everyone's freaking out and stuff usually corrects itself. People aren't going to keep throwing millions of dollars against the wall if it doesn't result in a championship, first of all, which is why I'm not that concerned about it. Like stuff's expensive now. And if you're going to keep paying millions of dollars for an offensive line and you don't win a championship, eventually you're going to stop doing that. But if you could suggest one temporary solve for NIL for college football specifically, because obviously this is a much bigger conversation than just college football. For college football specifically, what would it be?
Man, first of all, that's a great question. And you're right. We could probably go on your podcast and talk for hours about NIL and everything that goes along with it. There aren't that many quick fixes. And I think you would acknowledge that, right? And I think that's part of the problem is that it runs so deep. If there were to be a quick fix, if you will, or something that you could do in the near term, I think it would be enforce the rules on the books. So a lot of people will discuss NIL and say, it's the wild, wild west. There's no rules, let's go. But that's not the case. The problem is, and I've said this before with you guys, the problem is that the NCAA or the governing body, whoever it is, right? Like, they're not enforcing the rules that are already there. So, Joy, we have rules about boosters. We have rules about inducements. We have rules about tampering. And all of those things are where I think NIL has been kind of like, bastardized and used in a way in which it shouldn't be used. And if we just enforce those rules and we said, listen, you can't tamper with a current student athlete at a different school. You can't induce a recruit based on the NIL to get them to come to your school. You can't have a booster that is specifically there just to pay a player that is not tied to a legitimate NIL entity. If we just enforce those rules, I think a lot of this would start to iron itself out.
Joel Klatt this weekend, catch him the USFL semifinals, Philadelphia Stars, New Jersey Generals, Saturday, 3 Eastern and on Fox. And Klatt and the Big Noon crew have their first game on Thursday, September 1st, Penn State at Purdue, 7 p.m. Eastern on Fox. It's going to be an exciting season, but make sure you check out USFL semifinals this weekend. Thank you for joining us, Joel. Good to see you.
And enjoy week 2. We'll be in Austin for Alabama, Texas.
Ooh.
So that'll be a fun one.
Yummy. Enjoy the weekend, Joel.
Thank you. Great to see you.
You too.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.